Welcome to the Shutdown Stories, episode 15. I'm here with Valor Christian High School head distance coach, Greg Coplen. Cope, good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Of
Good to see you. Thanks for having me, buddy.
course. So you are in a unique position through all the shutdown, not only because you're a coach, but also because of your faith position with Valor as being one of the chaplains and helping out with all the chapels on campus.
Yeah, for sure. It was I'd say within my role, I think probably one of the things that I saw the most from kind of the chaplain side of things was with as much of the physical health piece that we've been worried about just, collectively as a country and just even the world. I think one of the things from kind of more of the chaplain side and, which really kind of almost kind of leans into kind of a, counseling side or mentoring side of things. What I and many people saw were really just, we were as worried about the mental and emotional, the social, health piece of everything with these kids with just, losing, for many of them losing their last shot, and that was a tough thing. And so, you were definitely working through some different things with different kids at different times. I don't think that, I do think that there was a piece of grief that went along with this for everybody. You lose something, you're going to grieve a little bit. But, that's the thing with grief is it doesn't hit everybody the same and it doesn't hit everybody the same time. And so there were, and continue to be a lot of conversations around that piece. So,
Yeah. I like that you brought up the kind of counseling and mentoring aspect of your job, just because unlike a lot of coaches, you're not just dealing with your specific athletes. You're dealing with an entire community of kids. Age 14 to 18. What was that like, kind of having that much more on your plate through this?
Yeah. The blessing of what I do and who I work with is, I'm not doing that on my own, for sure. I think that's the real just benefits of working at Valor is, and I shouldn't say Valor, I think any high school teacher or coach, kind of has probably viewed this the same. Their first priority is the kids. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely, has been a huge benefit and blessing to me just to have the individuals around me that I work with. I think probably every staff member at Valor Christian High School has probably considered themselves a bit of a counselor and mentor through this. And certainly we have our, the actual on-staff professionals. But at the same time, I think just from a, mentor to student piece of this, I think there's been a whole lot of just walking with each other through this, and because that's been the other tough thing is just even on that side is it's not just kids who are mourning or grieving. It's coaches, it's staff, it's parents, it's, and so I think that's just been, again, one of the coolest things in the midst of what's been a kind of crappy few months, that just to see the way that so many people have really come around each other, walked with each other, supported each other. Just kind of that, that's a big saying around our team and our campus in general is keeping the main thing. If our why is to go out and win a state championship or run personal bests or, whatever, then we have the wrong why, If our why is doing this because we love to compete with each other and train with each other, we love our community, the relationships. Well, when that's the why, then I think when we hit, seasons like this and obstacles like this, then we're certainly going to be a real benefit to each other when we kind of all have the same direction in mind of, we're doing this for a greater purpose than just running fast or getting a ribbon or a medal or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that why is so important with all programs at Valor, and that's something that during my time there I really admired about the cross country and distance program. But while we're on that, you guys didn't lose your main season. Cross country and distance runs their own personal season in the fall, but you did lose the track season. And
Yeah.
specifically, you lost the senior year of one of the greatest distance runners in Colorado high school history, in Cole Sprout.
Yeah.
What was walking through that situation specifically like, talking to Cole? And obviously, he's already signed. He's going to go off and run at Stanford next year, right?
Yep.
But he still lost his senior year where he had a chance to really finish out what has been a magical career.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think if there's somebody who's kind of well equipped to handle what all happened, I think Cole's one of those unique kids that actually can handle this. He may have handled it better than I did.
Mm-hmm.
I think for one, in the midst of all of this, Cole and a lot of kids, but they just put their head down and they went to work. Right. And when you kind of realize that the opportunities to race are, one, and it was just such an odd thing because first, like mid-March, you're basically told like, hey, the season has been suspended, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll reconvene, kind of as an association, from the Colorado, High School Athletic Association side of things is, hey, we'll reconvene here in a couple of weeks and then we'll kind of figure out what we're doing, and then 2 weeks later, well, we're still suspended and then still suspended. So I think kind of that waiting period was that may have been as tough as anything. It's just because you're continuing to train, you're continuing to work hard. And then it's like every couple of weeks, and then finally it was like, we'll have a drop dead date of like, I think it was end of April, 1st of May, where we'll make the final decision. And once you get to the end of April and you start kind of looking at like, how in the world would we have a season, you kind of realize what's taking place and it's probably getting shut down. And so I think you've kind of prepared yourself a little. And then they, certainly they shut it down. The season was canceled. And at that point, what I saw, and I'm kind of getting to the Cole piece in this is, for a lot of our kids, once that season was officially canceled, you just kind of saw them really deflate, The wind just really got knocked out of their cells. I think they'd all held out to that last glimmer of hope. And, but I think that was to be expected. And, for Cole, certainly there's that knowledge that he is on to Stanford, he is on to the next chapter of life. But, he's like kind of trying to, maneuver through all of this going, man, there's a 40-year-old state record in the mile that I really feel like I had a good chance to break this year, There's a state, record in the 3,200 that Cole already holds, but he's looking at it going, I can go out and crush that previous record. And just kind of looking at it like I'm never going to get the shot to do this. So, like he put a couple of time trials together where he went and, found a track, got out there, just had his parents out there and a few friends, maybe a couple of guys to help pace him. And, and he goes out and runs a 4:07.2 1600, which it won't go down as the state record, but unofficially he broke the state record by 4 seconds, a 40-year-old state record. And then he goes out and does a 3,200 time trial and breaks his old record by 8 seconds, and so there's these things where I think, and Cole got interviewed a couple of times and he said something that just kind of meant the world to me. He just said, I know it's not official, but I know it, and that's enough for me. And I thought that was just something real cool, just because, there's just, as a track athlete especially, so, when you're in a sport where basically your time kind of becomes what you're known for by the outside world anyway, for a kid like that, who really had these opportunities to set some pretty incredible records this year, for him to say, hey, I know I did it and that's enough for me. It just really, I think for him, it just kind of speaks to that. Like he understands where his worth comes from, he understands where his significance comes from. And it's not going to come from that 4:07.2 or from that 8:49, and for Cole with his faith, he knows that that's his significance. That's his worth. And I thought there was something really just cool and unique about you know, hearing a kid that you coached the past several years say, I know I did it and that's good enough for me. There was just some real, I mean, even from the coaching side, there was some real affirmation of, man, he gets it, you know, and that's been a really cool thing to see with him.
Yeah, Cole, truly an exceptional young man. I mean, so impressive in everything he does. I want to talk about your girls team a little bit too, because as I mentioned, you guys did get your full fall season in, and that included Nike regionals and then cross country nationals, where your girls team came out and threw some pretty shocking times up for what was expected from them. Does that mean more that they were able to achieve what they did, knowing that that was it for what should have been a 2019-20 season?
Sure. I do think, you know, I think there's probably two sides to that. I think one, you know, that group of girls, they're going to look back at that cross country season, you know, probably for the rest of their lives. I mean, you're never guaranteed another season like that. We hope we get another season like that this coming year, but there's no guarantees with that. And, you know, so I think on one side, you've got a group of girls who, it doesn't matter what happens, they know just that special season they had together, right? It will always be their number 8 team in the country. I mean, just what a phenomenal, you know, thing. You know, so that's a cool side of it. I think probably the tough side for them is, you know, when you have those little seasons of success like that, it kind of makes you hungry for more of that. And, you know, so when I think about the girls and kind of, you know, the directions they all kind of headed, hold on, I'm going to decline this call as it comes in. All right. You know, when I think about the direction that kind of each of them were headed coming out of the season, it hit all of them, I think, a little bit differently. You know, you've got a senior, Ashley Jones, who is off to run at High Point University this coming year. Certainly a ton of frustration for her, knowing that this is it. I'm not going to get another track season in high school. You know, a Bree Teagarden, same type of deal. You know, you lose your senior year. But again, Bree's off to run at Mercer University. So I think for those two, even as seniors, what's really good for them is there's just still those goals out there. They're on to the next chapter. You know, for some of the underclassmen, juniors and younger, you know, we had Taylor Whitfield went out and crushed her old personal best in the mile, went 4:55 in a time trial, which, you know, a year ago would have been the fastest time in the state. You know, and so she had a goal and she went out and she still accomplished it. You know, we had, and we just had everything in between, right? You had just, you know, those that could really go after those goals. You had those that are seniors that are losing the season. And then you kind of had everything in between where, you know, kids were all going out and doing their own time trials, but having different levels of success. And you could just really see where the absence of a season or the absence of a goal, it just hit each of them differently, you know, and I don't think any of them handled it incorrectly, you know, quite honestly. They're all wired differently, you know, and the loss of a season is, you know, going to impact, you know, each of those girls and guys on the team in different ways. But I would say that, you know, that group coming back, you know, I think even with that, they're getting pretty amped up for this coming cross country season. You know, they feel like they lost something over the spring and, you know, so, you know, we want to make sure we want to stay healthy and all of that, but, you know, they're getting after it in training now, like kind of looking ahead. So.
What about you? What is the thing that you've taken away most from this whole situation that you think you can either bring into next cross country season or just even into an everyday life?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things I think just, you know, as an individual, but I think collectively you've probably felt the same thing, and anybody involved in this is just how little control we actually have, you know. And as humans, we love control. And when it gets taken away from us, you know, that's a tough thing. But, you know, in the midst of who we are, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, from a Christian school and from a Christian perspective, you know, really it's just reminders, I think, from God that, well, why did you think you were in control in the first place? You never were in control, you know?
Yeah.
And I do think that that's been a pretty neat perspective to be reminded of, you know, kind of a verse that's just, I've certainly been sharing it a lot. I've heard others is, you know, just the words of Jesus saying, you know, in this world, there will be trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And I think that's just been such an incredible reminder during this that, yeah, there's trouble, and there's a lot of trouble we can't do anything about, you know. And, you know, I think one of the cool reminders to me personally, but also in the message that I'm hopefully, you know, putting out there with our athletes and other coaches is that, you know, just this idea of, as a cross-country coach or a track coach or a campus chaplain or as a dad or as a husband, you know, I think it can be really easy as we become more accustomed to those roles in life. Like, it can be really easy that those become the things we're dependent on. You know, if somebody were to say to me, you know, well, who are you, Greg? Well, I'm a coach, you know, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a runner, you know. And all of a sudden you hit these seasons of life where none of those things are necessarily guaranteed. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, what if you did lose those things? You know, I mean, you can't depend on being those things. So if all I can depend on is, you know, the promises of a God that created me, you know, the promises of a Savior who went to the cross for me, if all I can depend on are those things, well, quite honestly, isn't that what I'm supposed to only depend on? So I think even just personally, you know, like I do think God a few times through this has kind of smacked me upside the head and been like, hey, you know, where was your dependence anyway? You know, yeah, your team had an awesome season, you know, had the number 5 boy in the country and you had the number 8 girls team in the country. Did that, you know, and I think sometimes God like looks at us like we feel, as somebody who was a part of that, I think sometimes we feel more significant or more successful, you know, and I think that, you know, God uses times like this to say, hey, you think any of that made me love you more? You think that made you have more worth in my eyes? And so it's a message I've certainly needed to hear over and over. And hopefully it's a message that I have put out there to the kids I work with, you know.
Awesome. Well, Greg, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really appreciate your perspective as a coach, as a mentor, as a father, as a husband. It's really cool to hear your story. And I'm sure others will be impacted in the same way.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the time, buddy, and miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too. Well, I'm sure we'll see each other soon, hopefully.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for.
Yeah.
All right, bye, man.